Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Firefighters podcast, where we seek to develop, inspire, and motivate the world of the emergency services operator through a series of wide-ranging conversations. Now, before we go any further, just hit that rate, follow, or subscribe button on whatever platform you're listening to. It's a key performance indicator for us and helps us reach even more people. Now, here's what we've got for you today.
Domestic abuse is an ugly thing to talk about. It's one of those subjects that we often think completely sits outside of our world, outside of the fire station, outside of work altogether. We hope it's behind closed doors. We think it's in private life. It's nothing to do with here, is it? It's nothing to do with work. But the truth is, it is. It walks through the bay doors with people every single day. And in this episode, I sit down with Rhiain Akin from London Fire Brigade, who is the founder and chair of Phoenix, which is a domestic abuse support group created to help fire service staff who are experiencing abuse, whether it's physical, emotional, psychological, financial, sexual, coercive, or controlling. This conversation matters because domestic abuse does not discriminate. It affects people in every single profession, including ours. It affects firefighters, control staff, officers, support staff, men, women, LGBTQ, as well as junior staff and senior leaders. Rhiain talks openly about her own experiences, which takes tremendous bravery as a victim and survivor, how Phoenix began, and how one simple check-in message from a friend helped her at a point where she needed it the most. We explore why people in uniform often struggle to ask for help. Is it the shame, the fear of judgment? Maybe they're worried about the career impact, the pressure to be the strong one, the hero. They are the person so used to being the one that's fixing everyone else, right? But we need to get into how do we reach those people? How do we unpick those learned habits and what doing more actually looks like? I'm not just talking about vague posters on walls, which is an easy, low-hanging fruit. I'm talking about real mechanisms, safe leave perhaps, flexible working, financial support, actually clear policies, trained ambassadors in our fire and rescue services, in our stations, with you every day, and definitely better leadership conversations. Those are some of the things that will help us get to a culture where people feel able to say, I need help, without fear that they're going to lose their place, their role, or their identity and how you see them. Phoenix has now helped over 250 people become ambassadors, and they are helping drive policy training and cultural change, especially across London Fire Brigade. And they've got massive hopes and are already making steps into those hopes of supporting wider national work across the UK fire and rescue sector. This is a really powerful, meaningful, necessary human conversation. And as Rhiain makes it clear, you don't need to be an expert to make a real difference for someone in this space. Because sometimes the first step is simply noticing it, feeling confident enough to ask, patient enough to listen, have faith enough to actually believe them and not look away. I'll see you on the other side. In our sector, in our job, we talk a lot about protecting the public, but how common is it and what happens when the person who maybe needs protecting is sat on the appliance next to us?
Absolutely. It's frightening, actually, how common domestic abuse is. So just last year alone, in England and Wales, there was 3.8 million, and that's reported cases. And if we actually look in a wider aspect of this for in your lifetime, it's actually 1 in 4 people. So it doesn't discriminate. And actually, being in the fire service, we're not separate from society. We're actually a good reflection of it. And that's a good thing, right? But within that, we need to accept that we do have victims and victim survivors within our workplace. So it's really important when we're putting that uniform on and we're there to serve our communities and we're there to protect others, that we actually are looking out for our own. We're looking at the people in the same uniform as us, because it can be a really hidden, horrible thing. So it's really important that we have that awareness so that we can look out for our own members of staff too.
It's mad, isn't it? We kind of put on these professional avatars and there's maybe like an unspoken expectation that you're going to leave all of your personal baggage at home. And people say, oh, you got your work self. And you go, and I don't think that ever works. I mean, I agree you don't bring 100% of yourself to work because that maybe wouldn't be appropriate. But we like to think, so we get the maximum diversity and maximum number of ideas and different perspectives on things, that people are bringing a large proportion of themselves to work. But when people have been in situations of domestic abuse, they're often suffocating elements of themselves at home as well. They're very fearful of the ramifications of tense situations, or they can become hyper aware of different human behaviors, and they become very, very good at masking both their own emotions and trying to control situations, because there can be fatal or violent consequences to some of the most minute things that are happening to them in their private life. And when they turn up to work, it's not as though we're consciously ignoring it, but it certainly feels like it's not spoken about. I don't think it's very spoken about at all, because there's also a massive amount of shame that comes with it, isn't there?
Absolutely. It is. I think when you're in the fire service, you like to think of yourself as the person that's there to care for others. And we're proud of that, right? We love that. We love that about ourselves. We join in order to be there for people when they're in their moment of need. So actually, to wear that uniform and to go hands up, actually, do you know what? I'm really needing some help myself right now. It's not something that comes very easily to us. And there's a lot of stigma around that too. And actually, it's really important that we're conscious of that domestic abuse isn't an issue that stays at home. It's a legitimate workplace problem, because, as you've already said, it follows you. It follows you into the workplace. It follows you in all parts of your life, actually. So I think it's 81% of people say that being in an abusive relationship affects their ability to work. Now, for some people, that could be as far to go as that they actually struggle to even get to work. We know of perpetrators, even within my own fire service, that go as far to take your car keys or hide your car keys, or maybe just take the car. Or it might be that, they might know that a very common one is if you share children and they know that you are due on shift, because that's the thing with our shifts, right? They're set. So our partners know exactly when we're on duty, when we're not. Now, we don't have the type of job where we could maybe just turn up 10 minutes late, half an hour late, as you might get away to within an office. Actually, that's a really big issue, and that could lead to a fire engine be off the run. It could be disciplinary issues for yourself. So actually, even just by not turning up to look after your children in order for the other person to go to work can cause massive implications. So it's not just even getting to work, but it's then your ability to perform your job. It's well documented that we see perpetrators even turning up at the workplace. We see people having abusive phone calls, messages, emails. So it's really important for us to be aware that we have a responsibility as their friends, as their colleagues, as their employer, that we need to be able to support these people, because life at home is not safe, but by being in the workplace, it might not feel that much safer.
I find it hard to touch this, to plug into it, because of the level of shame that I think there's more shame related to this. Shame, embarrassment, losing face. Losing face is a big thing globally, just in society. You don't want to lose face. You don't want to be seen as less than or weak by anybody. And I suppose our role as first responders in the first responder sector probably adds an additional burden to that, in want to be seen to be strong, competent, professional, capable, maybe command and control or whatever else it is. But if you're struggling with mental health, that's hard enough for some people to talk about. But I feel like this is so much deeper, because there's an element, and I'm not sure I agree with this. Someone said to me ages ago, they were like, people get what they tolerate. Yes, to an extent. They're like, well, you could just leave. You could just this, you could just that. I think that is a very elitist opinion from an unconscious bias, from someone that's just never, ever got no idea what it's like to be in these situations. Because they So like, my missus would never do that to me.
No.
My fellow would never do that to me. I'd be able to speak to my parents. Why don't you just go and ring your parents? Why don't you just go and talk to them? If anyone's having any relationship challenges with their kids, a kid that's self-harming, or, a family member that's abusive, or a difficult parent relationship that they have with their own parents. If you haven't experienced that, it requires quite a high level of emotional intelligence to be able to hold space for someone struggling with that. And I don't even know that I would be any good at it, because I'm very Labrador energy, and I'm very, that person's so delicate, which is ironic because I do a lot of work in the mental health space, but I almost feel like that's easier. What have you learned about holding space for people that are in these situations?
I think your point on the tolerance is really interesting. When we wear our uniform in our culture, in our workplace, we're built on that you have to be strong, you have to be resilient. And so it's a really interesting link that's being researched at the moment. And it's actually showing something that I would have never expected, but it's making a lot of sense. And that is that actually they're looking into the links between the fire service and how likely you are to be in an abusive relationship. Now, for some, initially, you might find that strange because we think of the fire service as being male-dominated, and it is. And we think of, as we said, that strength, that courage, the resilience. You wouldn't ever get into that position. You'd stop it. It would never happen to you. It would never even come near you. However, what we're seeing is that we are trained as firefighters to deal with traumatic events. We're trained to push through. We're trained to make good and fix things as a situation. So actually, what we're seeing, and I see a lot myself in the support group that I run, is that we see members of staff that excuse the behaviour of their partner, but they did this, but they did that, but they had this happen in their childhood and they had that, and we can excuse it. We can make excuses for them. It's very difficult to see signs of abuse as a person on the outside looking in. But what people don't realise is that it's actually just as difficult when you are the victim yourself to see those signs of domestic abuse. We don't necessarily label it as I am in an abusive relationship. And we make excuses and we see it as, well, we need to push through, and we'll minimise it. Well, I've seen this person have this happen to them at work. I've seen this happen, in all the incidents we attend. So we minimise our own traumas sometimes. And actually, all of those things combined, as well as we've already said, the stigma in bringing something up, all of those things combined can make a lot of our fire service members of staff find themselves in these situations. And we see a lot of men come forward for support. Thank God they do. And I'm hoping it means we are doing something right as a fire service, because back 5-6 years ago when we first started our support group, it was only women that we had coming forward. We now have members of the LGBT community. We have men come forward. We have senior ranking officers that are men now coming forward. So if we make that space, and you've said you wouldn't be good at it, I beg to differ. I think you'd be brilliant, because you don't need to be an expert. You don't need to be an expert. You don't need to have all the answers. Most importantly, I always say, because of how we all are in the fire service of trying to fix things, you don't need to be the person to fix it all. You don't need to do any of that. Actually, all you really need to do is listen. It's just to listen. It's just to not judge, not make any assumptions, but believe them. And then you can look at signposting and getting support. But just by those really small actions, actually, you can make a huge difference going forward for that person.
My technique when I'm talking with people in arguably like crisis or is curiosity and trying to take the power out of things. So if I'm asking them, have you considered killing yourself? Or have you made any plans to kill yourself? Have you thought about it? It's people say, I don't believe you can ask that. I'm like, I think the reason people don't ask that is because they're scared of the answer.
Absolutely.
If they say yes, you definitely wanted to know that. Yeah. And if they say no and you go, have you thought of a plan of how you would do it? And then there's nothing wrong with it. You're just discussing it like you're discussing a cup on the table. For me, it's not to diminish their crisis or to belittle them or anything like that. But it's to, from their worldview, this is a logical decision. They think this is a logical decision. And just to drag it back away from mental health back into this, I can think of two pertinent examples in my life from people I know, not necessarily my personal life from abuse. But one was a guy who's, I'll just say guy then. One, this is obviously going to be a guy go now. One was a guy whose partner went through a cancer treatment. She had cancer. And very, very long-term traumatic thing with cancer. She was thankfully recovered from it. But through the process of that, everything became his fault. When the medication was wrong, it wasn't in the right place, he hadn't planned the travel plans. And he hated himself for it because he was like, I'm such a piece of shit, like, oh God, I know how much she's struggling, and everyone, you just hear the C-bomb and you're like, Jesus, yeah, well, God, I hope she's okay, God. And he's like, yeah, oh God, I need to do better. I need to do this, sorting out all the kids, doing this, doing that, doing everything. And then after and even when she was still going through treatment, there was some stuff going on. The level of contempt, and frustration and anger and like vitriol language about some of his behaviors and how much he wasn't doing as much as he could have done. But what's worse is it carried on after they had the all clear. Yeah. It's all together. I'm led to believe, this person isn't in the organization that I work in. But I was like, I didn't like her. I was like, mate, I get it. She had cancer. Okay. Served loads of people. That shit's not cool. That's not cool, mate. That's not justified. It wasn't justified then, to be honest, but I didn't really dare say anything. But like now, that's not on. Anyway, another one was a situation where I can't think of a convoluted way of giving the other example without making it too evident because this one's a bit too close to home. But this individual, like you say, he was used to being in a job where he'd get abuse working on fire engines, and he was kind of tolerant of that. He was a hard worker. He was just going to get stuff done. He took a lot of value from feeling like the provider. But you made a point about senior leadership, which I'm very interested in, because when you're in those situations, work can be, not always, but it can be a lovely pacifier, can be a great healthy focus. You don't want to be at home. Yeah. Don't want to be around that. And you focus on this thing, maybe because you need more financial security, maybe because you need to prove that you do have value in some way. And that can be an immensely powerful fuel, I would imagine, to power you on to great success, in quotation marks, if we see senior leadership as position of success, which many do. And also those positions, I imagine, become a lot more lonely because you don't have as many people to talk to. Everything you're speaking about is very confidential and you're so important. There's fewer of you. You know what I mean? I imagine it's really difficult in those positions.
Yeah, it is.
We're working in collaboration with the Blue Light Show, a national conference and exhibition built around one thing. Blue light services do better together than apart. I'm going to be there 1st and 2nd of July 2026 at the event, getting involved with those conversations and connecting with people who really care about doing the job better across the blue light sector. I'll see you there.
People are fearful when they disclose. I mean, even people, lower ranking, they could be very fearful of people judging them. Oh, what does it say about you? Or, what did you do? Or did you deserve it? Or even if they accept what's happened and they see it as bad as it should be, they might, without even saying it, have this sort of judgment of, are you fit to be on the run? Do we need to take you off the run? Are you capable of carrying out your role? And one thing that we see time and time again from people that do disclose to us is that 9 times out of 10, I mean that as a figure of speech, I don't have the actual data, but more often than not, I should say, people want to remain at work. Now, there are exceptions. There are people that are going through so much stress. They even say, do you know what? I just need some time. I need some time away from work to get myself back onto the track that I need to be in. But actually, most people want to be at work. They want that. It's their normality. It's their safe space. It's where their support network might be. And who are we to take that away from them? And actually, some of our best firefighters that I've come across who are incredibly, incredibly strong people have had the worst, most awful things going on in their home life, but want to remain at work, perform their job at exceptional standards. And actually, when you say about leadership, it's really important that we do lead them, we do support them, we make it that they're able to carry out their work. So a lot of the work we've done in Phoenix hasn't just been about setting up the support for people experiencing domestic abuse, but actually it's been looking at that. It's how can we support people in the workplace? So we've now got a lot of things set up. So there's things about flexible working, for example, that someone might say, look, it's all just in the very early stages of being handled. There's various services involved, whether it may be that the police are involved or there's legal teams or there's whatever it may be. I want to be at work. I know I can't be on the back of the fire engine right now because I might get a phone call and I'm going to need to take it. However, I will probably be fine to carry out my duties. And we've been able to support those members of staff. So it might mean that actually they just need 2 or 3 weeks, for example, being given meaningful alternative work where they could be maybe working at a fire station closer to home, or they might be working within a team where they're not on the run, but they're carrying out other duties that are really important for us, whether it be inputting high-rise information on a system or working on our hoarders projects or things like that. So we're able to offer that flexibility with their location, but maybe also with their working hours too. We've also got things like paid safe leave for people where they just need the odd day off here and there to go to the police station, or they might need to go to the school, that there's an appointment there, or with their legal team. And whereas in the olden days, people would have said, oh, do you know what, I might just need to go sick because I'm going to need an indefinite amount of days off here and there for the next month, 2 months. And there's no facility to help me do that. Whereas now we're in a place where people can continue to work if they want and they can have those days.
I had a colleague whose partner was alcoholic.
Right.
And that led into violence in the home. And they struggled with it for the longest time because they just couldn't find a way to hide the necessity to have time off. Because it was so sporadic. This person would just, come back to the house, evident they'd been drinking, couldn't think of anything to do with just couldn't find a safe space for the children to go, for this person to be able to come to work. And it was just a train crash for so long. Years this was. Because it didn't have any levers to pull that we could really think of in ways to help these individuals. And you kind of just hope they solve it, which is really a really shameful approach, to be honest with you. It's very much passing the buck whilst we don't think of it. I think we mask that with, this is Rhiann's personal life, it's not stepping into personal life. That's nothing to do with us. What they do behind closed doors has nothing to do with us.
Yeah.
Not sure that's entirely
Absolutely.
true. I appreciate that's a convenient, thing to write on the wall, and you think it's coming from a place of professional boundaries, but I'm not sure that's necessarily helping the person.
Totally agree. Yeah,
Mm,
we need to feel comfortable in those uncomfortable moments, right?
mhm,
We need to be able to have these conversations, because actually by not having them, we're basically reinforcing the shame and the stigma that the victim is then feeling, aren't we? By just not talking about it. Oh, it's just a domestic. It's a domestic. It's nothing to do with us. It's domestic. Actually, like you say, it's a much bigger picture now, much bigger picture. And those children, they are victims too in
I was about
themselves.
to say on the Safe Lives
Yeah,
website that you sent over, there's a really interesting piece on there
yeah,
around how children must be recognised as victims in their own right as well.
yeah. It's a new change that's been made in the law, as it should be.
Mm,
And there's a lot there actually to unpack, that children can be victims of domestic abuse. Um, Also, what's those longer term effects it can have on those
yeah.
children?
Mm,
Are we teaching them how to have a healthy relationship? Those boys, I have boys myself, are they going to have a healthy understanding of what it
mm,
is to be a man? What are we
mm,
teaching them about masculinity?
oh God.
Masculinity can be a beautiful, beautiful thing, right? And it's important that we teach them how that actually needs to look. I mean,
Hmm.
that's a whole big topic there to unpack in
I did a
itself, isn't
talk on
it?
it in South Yorkshire at the men's mental health
Right.
thing around sort of positive masculinity, command living alongside empathy, emotional intelligence living alongside compassion, and how these things can exist simultaneously. You can be strong and compassionate. You can,
Absolutely.
because children don't really learn; they absorb.
Mm,
Doesn't as much matter to. I mean, it matters what you say, but it really more matters how you live. You know what I
mm,
mean? They are observing you every day, what you are and are not tolerating. Are you an example, or are you like a tragic warning story of what
yeah,
not to do?
absolutely.
And I think the roles of positive male role models in society has been cast out in a baby in the bathwater analogy due to the extremes of toxic masculinity, the Andrew Tates of the world, and other individuals alike. And the really positive male role models, like, I don't know, like Bear Grylls or whoever, some people like that shy away from the public light more, or like Jason Fox or something like, I don't know.
Yeah.
There's some really great, and then you end up with, we'll get off this rabbit hole in a minute. I'm so passionate about it because like
Mm.
I've got close friends in their mid-20s, mid-30s. My partner is in her early 30s, and she said when she was dating, she's like, where the hell are all the good men gone?
Hmm.
Where's chivalry? Where's this? Where's
Absolutely.
that? Well, you beat it out of us. Like, and I say it as a joke. She didn't do that. Neither did you. But like, we got scared to
Mm,
hold doors open for people. We got scared to do these things because the people that should have heard the domestic abuse message most, or the stalker, or the pervert, or the predator, the people that were trying to educate not to do it, they weren't even listening.
hmm.
The people who were listening were already the people not doing it, who then
Converted already.
rolled back even further, and went, oh God, I don't want to walk on the same road as a woman in case I make her feel this way. And someone's like, no, that wasn't for you. That was for the predator. And you're like, well, I'm never going to approach somebody. So I can't stand ever the thought, I grew up with sisters and I've got a daughter, and I'm just like very sensitive to that
Yeah.
idea of the fragility of the feminine, the true feminine energy.
Yeah.
But anyway, total rabbit hole. Sorry.
It's
But
all linked though. Gender inequality is the building blocks to so many problems. And even if we just take it to the fire service, just
mm,
thinking about our own little bubble ourselves, gender inequality causes us so many issues, so many issues. And it's all of us. This is the thing. This is the thing.
yeah.
I do not hate men. I don't hate men. Do I read
Misandry.
feminist ideology? Yes, I do.
Yeah.
And I see so many examples of amazing, very humble men just in London Fire Brigade alone, right? I see, and I do a lot of, events and stuff. I see a lot of members of other fire services too. And this isn't about a hate on men. Actually, gender inequality is just as bad for men as women. It shows in very different ways, ultimately
We
for
only
women,
focus on the bright light, not the dark shadow, because we go more men at the top end of organizations. I agree, like the misogynistic organizational structure, or whatever we want to term it as. But we don't see the other side, because men have got a greater risk appetite. So they'll go for promotions that they're not qualified for. They'll also gamble more.
Yeah.
There's also more of them in prison.
Absolutely.
There's also more of them commit suicide. There's also more of them that would tolerate domestic abuse.
Absolutely.
Because if a guy smacks a woman, not that either is fine, but if a guy smacks a woman, immediately everyone in their world would go, we need to get away from this. We need to put something in place. We need to find a safe space for you. Or maybe not so quickly, so fast, but everyone would the vast majority of people would unanimously disagree that there is no context where that was okay or appropriate. A guy probably wouldn't even tell anyone. They'd go, well, I mean, she's a hot-headed, she's a, I'm not even going to make any stereotypes, but like she's a hot-headed, and that's what I like about her. But every now and again, Christ, she pulled a knife out the other week. That was crazy.
Yeah.
What are you on about? Mate? That's really scary. What the hell are you on about?
Yeah, I do see both sides. I see, unfortunately, there are a lot of women that experience domestic abuse. Now, as you say, if it happened in the street, you would like to think it is more likely. And there's been social experiments about this, hasn't there? That people would intervene. Some of them videos? People intervene.
So in the middle of London, there was some really good ones done, wasn't there?
Yeah. So if it's a man and it's a man hitting a woman, you saw in the experiment that people will intervene.
Yeah.
If it's, and this is what I think was really sad, I mean, there's something to be said about it being a woman to a man. Even worse is it a man to another man. Now, there's a whole world out there. When we think about the LGBT community, we see sunshine, we see rainbows. It's a happy place, right? Absolutely not, actually. Now, can there be the most healthy, beautiful relationships? Of course, right? Some of my best friends are in it. However, we as a society really do play a part in same-sex relationships and the violence and abuse that can occur. And actually, the statistics are in the worst for that community. And there's many reasons. There could be such as fear of being outed, disclosing HIV status, all sorts to unpack there. But one of the big ones is society, and that actually, do we see it as bad for a male on male fight, physical fight in a relationship, as we do for a man to a woman, when obviously we should treat all equally. But going back to the gender inequality, there is a lot there. And one thing that really makes me sad is when we go, I go on a lot of out duties in the fire service. I'm quite lucky. I get to meet a lot of different people, work on a lot of different watches. One thing I find really sad is, and you can see it from a mile off, the watch where you get a lot of men, usually the bigger watches, usually the watches where there might be 10, 15, 20 people. And it's like a fight for alpha. And I look at it as an outsider in, and I can see them all around the mess table, and they could be sitting with their legs so far apart, it must be really uncomfortable. And their arms are up here, and they're all basically shouting simultaneously, not listening to a word anyone else is saying. Now you're laughing because you can probably picture
just on
this,
broadcast.
Right? Absolutely. Yeah. But what's sad in that is, first of all, it's actually, from a selfish perspective, it's quite uninviting as a woman to come in because you don't feel welcome. You don't really feel like you can integrate and be a part of it. It's quite intimidating, especially when I go as an officer with having to be in charge. But actually, let's just look at this from a man's perspective. If I was having trouble, whether it be that I'm in an abusive relationship, I've got an alcohol problem, mental health issue, whatever it might be, would I go into that workplace as a man feeling like I can get support? Would I feel like I can make myself vulnerable, open up, maybe shed a tear if I needed to, and really get the help that I desperately needed? No. And I see this all the time. And actually, I find so many times when I go on these out duties that men open up to me. There'll be a quiet moment after a shout or in the watch room or whatever we're doing, maybe we're even washing up. And it will come out, about an issue, whether it be about domestic abuse or anything. And I think it's a sign that there is something that doesn't feel safe about doing it in your working environment. So if I could have a magic wand, I think this would be one of the things I would love to solve, because how many people that could help, how many men, how many women, how many people, however you identify, how much of a better workplace would that be, that you can still have a laugh, you can still do all of that, but you can be your authentic self, and you can have that feeling of safety and support, which ironically is what we're there to give to the public, how you could get that from your own when you really need it. That in itself would help domestic abuse massively.
I think it's also the cascade effect as well, like you referenced, about the unseen cost of what's happening to the family and the children, and its effect that it's having them long term. That's an enormous hidden cost. Enormous. Assuming these people don't choose a fatal solution to some of these as well, which can often be the case because they take value from having a purpose at work, but most people take a tremendous value from their loved ones as well, and being significant to them, being able to feel like they matter. Your loved ones, more than anyone, you hope are going to care if you wake up in the morning or not. And if you don't feel that in your innermost circle, in your vulnerable space, and as you allude to, don't feel you can access it from your secondary family, well, then actually some horrific solutions might actually start looking a lot more logical, maybe even obvious.
Absolutely.
Maybe even the right thing to do. Maybe even things would be better off that way, which is a term we hear.
I've heard that, unfortunately, so many times. So many people, because of Phoenix giving the support for staff experiencing domestic abuse.
How did Phoenix get started?
Interesting story. So I've got no issue to open up with this here, that I am myself a victim survivor of domestic abuse. I was in a long-term relationship from teenager right through for maybe around 20 years, and what felt like my normal relationship, actually I realised over time really, really wasn't healthy, had a really awful effect on me. And being in the fire service, as I started to understand, because I was having counselling, and they were starting to explain to me, this isn't okay, actually, this isn't normal, and we were delving into it more. I started to open up. It took me a long time to leave it, and actually statistics show us it can take people up to 7 attempts to leave an abusive relationship. And my watch had no idea. Absolutely no idea that I was in an abusive relationship, because I was very good at hiding it, because actually that suited me as well. I didn't really want them to know. I wanted that to be my normal and to have a laugh and to be treated like everybody else at work. So I never set out to initially create Phoenix, but what naturally happened is I started to open up to staff, like, I am going through something. I needed some time off of work for a while where I was really not in a good place and I needed to get myself stronger. It got to the point where my watch knew a lot more about it. I had to change areas. I had to sell up and move area completely. And we moved nearly 100 miles. And my watch, bless them, between shifts all came and helped me for the day, helped me pack all my stuff in a van, helped me move, helped me unpack all of the boxes. And I couldn't have asked for anything more. And a few of them said to me, like, I wish you'd have told me. I didn't know. I feel so bad. I'm like, you don't need to worry. Like, it wasn't your fault. I hid it and they would have never have known. But what then happened is I was then just organically getting more and more people ask me, so-and-so's going through whatever it might be. What did you do about this? How did you deal with that? Who did you get advice from for whatever it may be? And slowly, but surely, Phoenix began to develop. And then we got recognised as a formal support group within the fire service. It's about 5 or 6 years ago. I remember getting told I had to write a constitution to be able to do it. And I remember thinking, I can't even spell the word constitution. Like, I'm in way out of my depth right now. What am I doing? I had complete
I had to do one of them
syndrome.
for the Pink Firefighters charity. I was like,
yeah, you're like, what am I
honest.
doing? And then the doubt comes in, right? Oh, do you know what? I'm trying to bite off more than I can chew here. Who am I to say I can help other people? But actually, as much as I have had those moments of doubts, I'm so proud of Phoenix. I'm so glad I didn't give up. And I remember in the very beginning, I said, you know, if I can just help one person, I'll just be so happy. Just one person. If going through what I have has helped one person, that's my silver lining. That will make everything feel so much better. But actually what's happened is Phoenix has now grown so big. So we've got 2 senior allies who are senior officers in a fire service, but we've got over 250 ambassadors. And we've helped so many members of staff, so many. And now we're having more men come forward. I'm so relieved because I know it's out there. I know for a fact that it's out there.
The numbers are there. And they're only the reported ones.
Absolutely.
And that's because of this, you've got to assume it's significantly higher than that.
Absolutely.
I have been wearing Gore-Tex for nearly 2 decades on the front line, working in hostile environments, tackling challenging incidents from firefighting to water incidents and in urban search and rescue environments. Gore-Tex have a well-earned reputation for protecting professionals in the fire and emergency services through their family of highly innovative, waterproof, breathable moisture barriers that exceeds global performance standards and are trusted worldwide. Gore-Tex, going further together.
And we had a really interesting input at one of our meetings late last year by Mankind, actually. And I consider myself a pretty well-educated person on domestic abuse over the years. I've, the amount of studying and research I've done on it. But for me, even that was so eye-opening. And it spoke about the stigma and how difficult it can be, particularly for men. I mean, it's hard enough as a woman, but for a man to come forward and say, my partner's abusive, is so hard. And it looks at things that we normalise. So there's always someone that will come to your mind when I say this, but as an example, there'll be a person on your watch and you're going to go on a night out, for example, and they'll say, just better check with the missus. And there'll be all the jokes. Oh, he's under the farm. Oh, watch this one. Oh, look, got to check. Or you got to check if you can go to the toilet. And we all make a laugh. We all make a joke. And they'll say, yeah, I can't do it. I can't do it. Now, we normalise and we joke about things like that. We normalise things like, I've got a friend who, when we were out, they had a tracker on their phone. So when we changed...
Christ. There's a lot of them around now, isn't there? What is that?
And it's normalised. So
I get it for your kids if they're very young. We used to use one for my daughter when she would go out playing, but on your partner?
It's such a fine line, isn't it? It can be used in a very healthy, safety conscious way that there's nothing wrong with it.
I used it with my ex when she went out horse riding. She would put her WhatsApp on shared location for an hour when she would ride a horse. Apparently there is actually a horse app you can use.
That's clever.
But it was so in case she fell off. You know.
Yeah.
But it would time out after an hour and then she'd let me know where she was or whatever.
Yeah.
And it is so tough because it just navigating that. I'm lucky I've never had it in a relationship, but when I said, "Oh, you switch your thing on tonight, Rhiain," and you're like, "Oh, I'm just out with the girls, or we're just going out with the team," and the immediate next question, if there's an issue in our psychological safety in our relationship, is, "Well, what are you trying to hide?"
Absolutely.
I don't even know where you go from that question.
Absolutely.
Because that is an immediate indicator that something is very wrong.
There's a
in
pressure.
Our relationship.
You're being pressured to be monitored, to be tracked.
Yeah, because there's no good answer to that.
No. And I've been out with friends, male friends that I work with, and we'd have changed locations, so we'd have gone from one establishment to another, and they'll get a text. Why? Oh, you're in so and so place now, are you? Or what are you doing there? Or are you getting food? Or are you? Now that to me is not. That's not comfortable. I wouldn't like to be in that situation. Others might feel fine with it, and their relationship might be completely healthy. But what's important is these seemingly quite small behaviours that we're just mindful, and you can just have that conversation.
Death by 1,000 cuts.
There you go. And if we just ask those questions in a healthy manner to a friend, in the context and concern that we have, there's nothing wrong with that. And it could be that the mate that you saw go and check with their partner if they could go out and then they couldn't, could be completely innocent. Could be that their partner's going, "You donut, you forgot it's parents' evening. We need to both be home. We've got to go to the school." Or it might be, we were going to go on that date night, or something completely innocent. So it's important that we check that.
It might be as well that they were cheated on in a past relationship. If the other person was cheated on in a past relationship, you can sometimes have it where they are obviously hyper worried about that sort of thing occurring again because it was so hurtful the first time, and that causes them to, from a place of self-preservation, make sure this doesn't happen again. But that can quickly tip into the abuse. And I actually feel for female firefighters on male dominant watches when the partners of the male firefighters are like, "Oh, is Sarah there tonight?" You know what I mean? And you're like, "Well, yeah, the whole team's here." I said, "Is Sarah there?" Yeah. Don't you let me? And they're like, "Let me see the pictures that you took when you were out."
Yeah.
Whoa.
Too much.
How horrible that is for this anonymous Sarah or you or anybody. Do you know what I mean? It's just like that person's just there because they're part of the team, same as anybody else, having a laugh, and that can be quite toxic again in another way.
Yeah.
But it is such a personal thing because, like you say, you might ask that person, "Hey man, everything okay? Is everything okay at home?" Checking up, just checking in. And they might get, "Yeah, she worries a lot." Or, "Yeah, he worries about me. He knows I get lost. He knows I always forget my phone. I lost my keys last time I was out." Yeah, okay. Do you know what I mean? But also might be, "Oh yeah, Rhiain, how about you mind your business? Yeah. Let's go do it." And you're like, "Well, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just checking in, brother.
Yeah.
No worries. Apologise. Sorry."
Yeah.
It's
a minefield because you don't know people's situations, but sometimes it's important that they maybe have that other perspective, because this trickle effect that can happen in a relationship where it might just start as, let me know, let me know where you're going or when you get there so I know you're safe. Now that to me is a fairly standard normal thing to say, not a problem. It then might be, well, send me your location so I know you've got there. Okay, for example. It then might turn into, and this is another form that can take a turn. Well, I saw you on the Ring doorbell. If you were only going to so and so, why have you left at that time? Surely you wouldn't have had to have left till X time. Or if you're only going so and so, or you're only seeing this person, or there's nothing really going on, why was you wearing X, Y, or Z? And that's when things can start to trickle. Now, that can happen over time. So when you're having that conversation with somebody, they're normal, they're what they've got used to isn't necessarily normal. And actually, sometimes them just having that conversation, not to feel like they're being judged, but just to have that open, trusting conversation with a friend might make them sort of think to themselves, actually, do you know what? Maybe you've got a point.
And I'm agreeing with you, but in the back of my mind then, I was thinking about another person that I know who wouldn't necessarily be considered one of the most good-looking, intelligent people in the world. Neither am I, for that matter. But this person has always struggled to get a partner at all since very young age. They've had maybe a couple of partners in their decades of being on this earth. So when they get someone, it's really special. It's really special. And they'll tolerate a lot.
Yeah.
You know, they'll tolerate a hell of a lot. And there's one that I know of where all of their money goes into the other person's bank account. They're just so much more intelligent than me, Rhiain. Like, I'm not really very good with money. They know I'm not very good with money, you know. And if I desperately need something, then you know, they never necessarily stop me having the money. But it's good that they budget it because I'm terrible with it. And then you see them just not being able to do stuff, and they're just like they can't be involved in watch meals or whatever because they haven't got any money, even though they're earning the same that you're earning. They've got no money because this other person has all their money. What?
It's awful. Yeah, we had a case just last year where we were supporting a male firefighter in our service who was a victim of financial abuse. And it just goes to show you again, like domestic abuse does not have a look. Right? It doesn't have to look a certain way. It doesn't have to be your stereotypical. You don't have to be punched.
You don't have to be this. You don't have to be that. Yeah.
It doesn't have to be that stereotypical situation that we can think of in our brain where it will be working class man hitting a woman and her carrying away and that's it. Actually, there's so many forms. And the unfortunate thing is it doesn't discriminate. So it's throughout society, throughout all of the classes, no matter how much money you have or don't have, what you look like, where you come from, sexuality, anything. So this particular case was a male that was experiencing financial abuse. And as you've just mentioned, it was all of their salary, everything they have was going into their partner's account. Now, this relationship started in a very, what seemed like a healthy way. She seemed very supporting and loving. They started to live together, and this person has neurodiversities. So it was, well, I'm not very organised. I'm dyslexic, so I struggle to read stuff. I don't really always necessarily.
I've got scammed before. Someone scammed me.
Yeah. So it was the person, the partner, the female saying, well, I can deal with that for you. Whenever you get statements from your bank, whatever you're not sure, just send it to me and I'll read it and I'll tell you what it says. So it seemed as it was a healthy, an act of kindness.
The poison's in the dose, isn't it?
Absolutely. And it just escalated from there to the point where that person had all of the house, everything was in their name because they can just take care of it for you. So you don't need to worry. All of their money went into the partner's account. So what we then saw was, as you say, a person that was effectively a shadow of their former self, withdrawn, very anxious, scared, embarrassed, really embarrassed, and had not a penny to their name. But again, when we talk about our leadership and we talk about things our employers can do, one of the things we do in our fire service now is we have financial mechanisms available for all of our staff. So you can contact our HR department and arrange for an amount of your salary, and you choose what the amount might be, to go straight into a safe account that nobody else needs to know about. So it can give people a chance to save money away from perpetrator. It won't show on their bank statement. We've got two different ways you can do it, but both do the same thing. And that can give our staff a way to save money for them to be able to leave the relationship if that's what they want to do. But there are tons of different types of domestic abuse. And if we were to talk about, what can we do? What can we do? What can I do? I'm a firefighter. What can I do?
What can I do?
This is a big
I'm a
problem.
watch manager. I've got
What can I
lots
do?
of crew. I've got 3 crew managers, 10 firefighters on my team, all in very different life circumstances. Some with very old style relationships that I struggle with at times.
Yeah.
And some with very new open relationships, which I equally find interesting and perplexing at times. And I'm always appreciative and acknowledging of differences and all that jazz. But some things I hear, I go, oh, that doesn't sound like you like a different flavor of Coke to me. That sounds weird and maybe a bit dangerous and maybe long-term not very healthy.
Yeah. It's just, I think it's really important for us all to educate ourselves. We do not need to be experts. We absolutely do not need to be experts, but potentially even just half an hour of having a little read up on domestic abuse might even be all you need to do, to understand the different types. So you've got the physical abuse. We've spoken about that. We've spoken about financial abuse. But let's look at other things. There's sexual abuse. There's making someone feel pressured to do, sexual activity that they're not comfortable with or they don't like. There's emotional, psychological abuse, intimidation, humiliation. You spoke about before, like constant criticism can really affect someone's self-esteem. It makes you believe what they're saying. Oh, maybe I'm not really a good mom. Maybe I'm not. Maybe I didn't cook that dinner very nice for them. Maybe I didn't do that. No, I deserved for him to embarrass me like that in front of the children because I'm not doing what I should do.
And because an effective part of it as well is excluding you from other people in your life, that person then becomes your whole world. So their view becomes the only view you interact with. So you've no other alternatives to validate your own self-worth, because this person says I'm stupid, this person says I'm crap in bed, this person says I'm a bad human being, I'm a terrible parent, blah, 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 blah. And that is that's my whole universe that, that I'm able to interact with. So that becomes the only truth that you know.
It does.
And eventually that becomes a story you're telling yourself.
It does. All abuse, whatever type we're looking at, whether it's coercion and control, psychological, physical, all of them are based on power and control. But all of them also thrive in that silence that we have about it as a society. So isolation, isolating someone from their family, from their friends, absolutely will enable perpetrator to become more abusive. They've not got to worry about what X, Y, or Z might say about them because they're not going to know. So it's going to make it much more easier for them to go about what they're doing. Self-esteem, I think, as well. Yeah.
Sorry, what you're saying, I keep cycling back to the LGBTQ plus sector, because when I go it's part of society, excluded by their family, excluded by friends, either out or not out in whatever their chosen preference is, So they've already found themselves in a small group of people who struggle to get allies or support. And then within that already small group of people, they've found somebody that they want to be in a relationship with. That I would imagine. And well, I did a look as we've been talking now at some of the data around the higher rates that they experience than in heterosexual relationships. And it's that fear of being outed. It's that lack of trust in large organizations, services, structures, whether it be government or your employer or general society, the previous discrimination from institutions, the belief that, most places are heteronormative and not built for them, that they would cling on harder and longer and probably tolerate more. Well, I'm making slight assumptions there, but only because I'm seeing a higher rate from the statistics.
There is,
in that. I'm trying to paint a story behind the statistics. Obviously, I can't speak to it from personal experience, but I'm just like, that's rough.
It's scary. It's really, really scary.
It is beyond a privilege to be able to bring the Firefighters podcast to you, and we are so grateful for every single person that supports, listens, shares, and follows our journey. And to help us keep doing it, create more, reach more guests internationally, and make the podcast sustainable, we're asking for you to help. And to do this, we've set up a Patreon page. By joining our Patreon community, you will get access to every single full episode archive we have ever made. Now, hundreds and hundreds of key documents that we've got in there on fire behavior, firefighter health, cancer risks, incident debriefs, and so much more. So if you feel like you want to join the Patreon crew and help us make this possible, head to patreon.com/TFFPC or check the link in any episode podcast notes.
What we need to remember as well is that there's a lot more barriers to people from the LGBT community to then getting the support that they need. There's enough barriers for your heterosexual person, with shame and the stigma and various other things. But for someone from the LGBT community, there's even less pathways to support. Yeah. So it's incredibly important that as friends, as family, as colleagues, that we are looking out. We are looking out, and we're not normalizing behaviors that shouldn't be normalized.
So this policy procedure that's enacting in London Fire Brigade, I mean, there is some legislative moves around some of this stuff as well, isn't there? I know you sent a reference to the draft statutory guidance framework for domestic abuse. Is there much, and I know I'm putting you on the spot here, sorry, but is there much currently in legislation, and how much have you seen that translate? I look at places like London Fire Brigade, and because they're so much bigger, sometimes I think that's why I don't think other people care less. I think other organisations and services perhaps they have less capacity sometimes. And that's why I think it's great to see larger organisations like London Fire Brigade leading and sharing that information once they have enacted it. So how you mentioned about the agreement or sort of procedure within the finance and payroll structure and how that can aid these sort of situations. What other things is being worked on? What other angles or sort of pillars are being seen as ways that we can get these into organizations so that when people are, when you're viscerally recognizing something and you're like, and I don't know what lever I'm supposed to pull here. I want to do something because this just looks bad. I can't put words to it, but this is bad.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. I think number one is, as we've said, is accepting that domestic abuse is a legitimate workplace problem. It is something that we all need to accept is in the workplace, and we have a duty of care and a moral responsibility to do something about. So if we look at London Fire Brigade, 1 in 4 people experiencing domestic abuse in their lifetime, that equates to roughly 2,000 members of our staff. So when you think of it like that, suddenly it brings it home, doesn't it? And you think, right, okay, yeah, that's scary. I don't like that actually. Now, I've been really
Same with miscarriages,
fortunate,
just as a random aside.
unfortunately. Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
1 in 4 is a miscarriage.
And
We had a
again, there's
miscarriage.
the taboo and the stigma about
Talk
talking
about
about it, even though it's actually really common.
Sorry, ADHD
so-
brain. Carry on.
No, you're fine. What's important is, what you're touched on there is really important, because it is our social norms that play a huge part in this. So if you look back, for example, even when I was a kid, I'm not that old, I'm in my 40s, I'm not that old. When I was a kid, working class and proud, right? You would always have uncle, or an uncle that's not an uncle, but you call an uncle, auntie, whatever, that's got a job, they do manual labour, and they've got the end of a finger missing or a big burn
Salt
on their
of the
arm.
earth people,
Something like that, right? Now, it was normal. How did you get that? What's that? I remember wanting to keep touching it. I was like, where's, like, can you feel that? Can you feel that? It was very normal to have workplace injuries, right? Very normal.
My uncle worked in a woodyard, lost 2 of his fingers.
There you go. There you go.
He used to
right?
pretend the rabbits had eaten them, because one of the rabbits was a little bit nippy, and they had 2 rabbits at their house. We used to go around after school on Wednesdays, and he'd say, "Careful of the rabbits, kids. You remember?" And I'd be like, "Oh, Jesus Christ, it's eating Uncle's fingers."
Watch out for that
Stupid.
rabbit.
Stupid.
But it was
like,
just
rabbit's got a tiny mouth,
normal,
but this
wasn't
is
it?
illogical. Yeah.
Now, look at us now, right? If I worked with someone and they had a bit of their finger missing, or some kind of horrendous injury from work, it would be shocking. You'd be like, oh my God, did you put an injury claim in for that? You could sue. You should do it. That's not okay. Our social acceptance has completely changed. Now, that started with law and legislation and policy. However, it's also what
I think the capitalist world hated that.
Yeah.
People starting to recognise some of their rights from this genuine
How dare
corporate
we?
negligence.
Yeah.
How dare you want to be treated like a human?
Dare you want to be treated?
Commoner.
But it's changed massively, and that can be the same for domestic abuse. We can get to a point where we treat it the way we should be, that we treat gender inequality as we should be. We treat toxic masculinity, not that I like using that term, but as we should be. Hold on a second. No. We don't do that here. We don't do that here. That's not safe. That's not cool. That's not healthy. That doesn't make for anyone feel good. So with Phoenix, it did start as a group that supports anyone experiencing domestic abuse. That is our bread and butter. That is what we do. That's what I'm proud that we do. Our ambassadors are all trained. They have a day's input. It's CPD accredited. And we do refresher courses. We have quarterly meetings. We have lots of speakers. We run events. And we raise lots of awareness. So that in itself, I'm so grateful that we have been given that space in our organisation
I'd love to come to
do
one.
it. Oh, I'd love to have you. We'll have to organise it. But it's developed on from there. So I looked at our policy, which was then called the domestic violence policy. And it's great we had one. A lot of places don't. However, it served absolutely no purpose whatsoever. You would
because
never...
it framed it as
It was
violence,
domestic violence,
which people
for
see
start.
as physical only.
Absolutely.
Unconscious bias.
Yeah. And you would never read it as a perpetrator or a victim and sort of say, I know where I stand here, or I know what I need to do, or I know.
You know how when you
how I
name
can get
something,
help.
you actually limit it accidentally? Do you know,
Yeah.
Women, I don't know if this is still the case, but I know it used to be the case, women cannot be charged with rape. You know, when someone says rape, 100% of people that commit rape are men. Because the definition of rape is penal penetration. So because of the way you defined it, you get to say all the rapists are men.
You can be a victim and you can't. Yeah.
And I'm like, I never knew. I might have changed since, but I remember reading it and I'm like, oh my God.
Changed, yeah. And
no
rape,
wonder. It probably has changed. It probably has
Yeah.
changed. I'm talking generation. I read it in a book, so it's probably
Yeah.
20 years old.
Yeah.
But I was like, no way.
It's scary.
That's
And again,
mad.
it's
But like I
our
say, you name
society.
this domestic violence.
Yeah.
Someone goes, well, he's not punching you, Rhiain. I mean, I'm not sure this really applies. Or you
Yeah.
wouldn't ask for help because you're like, well, it's not got that
It's
bad
not
yet.
an issue, is it?
They've only
'Cause
pushed me
it's
down
not-
the stairs once.
Yeah,
Fucking what?
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this policy really didn't serve the purpose that we needed it to serve. So we were, and this is about our organisation. I mean, we did the work, but this is about our organisation empowering us to do it, that we were able to recreate it. We actually completely scrapped it and we wrote a brand new domestic abuse policy. And, that's gone through consultation and that's now going to be launched any day now with our organisation. So I'm really, really proud of that. And our ambassadors got to play a part in that too. We petitioned, it took us a while to get permission, but we've now got a sexual or an anti-sexual harassment policy that's been written. And that's going to be launched this year too. So we've done a lot of policy work, but it goes on from there. So we've spoke about the financial mechanisms we've now got in place. We've also got in place flexible working, safe paid leave. These are all things that can be used as mechanisms to support people and that have been proven to be actual lifelines, really, when someone really needs it. We've also provided training to HR. We've got a professional standards unit, so it's those as well. And actually, our deputy assistant commissioners that are presiding managers in cases relating to sexual harassment and domestic abuse, we've ensured that they are all receiving training too on domestic abuse and sexual harassment, so that any one of those people from those departments where people are going needing help, and they may not have actually, what's interesting here is disclosed, for example, they're in an abusive relationship. However, if you've got that little bit more understanding and, you've got somebody who's involved in a case, it could be something such as, there's a disciplinary because they're suddenly having a lot of time off of work or they've been late a lot to work, right? Now, I'm not excusing that. There's obviously implications for that and we need to be operationally ready. However, what I will say is that...
But is that the symptom or the cause?
Exactly. And it's really important that we can have that conversation, that somebody who's worked for us for years and always had an impeccable record and suddenly has issues with coming to work or turning up on time to work, or that they're not performing at the level we've always seen them perform. What is the reason for that? Do we need to have a conversation to look at the why? And actually, do we need to put some support mechanisms and some signposting in place here to help them? So that training has been vital. What I would love, and I hope to do one day, would be that all staff can have a basic input on domestic abuse. I'm talking very, very basic, but at the very least for us to then understand it and be able to recognise those signs in other members of staff, but also how to then have that conversation if we need to. That alone can save lives, literally. So I really hope we can do that one day. And then we're also...
Why would they not have you... why would they not have someone like you preside over things like that? Why do we have this thing about seniority where we go, this person needs to do it because of this and this and this? But if we solicited information from a subject matter expert, that person as a subject matter expert would preside over this thing.
Yeah.
But we don't seem to do that with other things. We go, well, the person with the most stuff on their shoulders best make the decision because they're clearly best placed for it. No, they're not. They just got an MBA and they've just done really well in command and control.
Yeah.
That doesn't make them an expert in finance. Doesn't make them an expert in domestic abuse or neurodiversity. Doesn't make them any of those things.
I agree, but I'm really lucky to say that actually I did make that point to the Brigade and they have listened, and actually we've been involved as a subject matter expert. So I don't go to take sides, but I have advised on several cases because they can be so complex. And one thing we haven't spoken about is when we've got both perpetrator and victim survivor within the organisation, then you can be looking at a huge minefield. You can be looking at counter allegations. You can be looking at primary victim, secondary victim, and all of the other nuances there. So it's really, really important that we get our facts straight and we understand all of those implications when we're then having to make a decision. But quite rightly, they have recognised that that is something that we need. So we have been consulted and we're getting more training for the members of staff that are making those decisions, because what I'm really keen to do is to embed our beliefs, our values from Phoenix into the organisation to make those real cultural changes. So it's got a long way to go. It's not going to be an overnight fix, but we're definitely taking big steps forward. And I think that's probably what I'm most proud of, actually, is embedding those changes.
You should be.
Thank you.
Should be remarkably bloody proud of it. Because this stuff takes such a heavy... You often see, and that's why it's so tragic to hear your own story, because so often someone's superpower sits right next to a scar, which we will all benefit morbidly from your tragic situation, which I find hard even to say those words without seeming disrespectful or anything like that. But I think it's one of the most powerful things to be able to get out of a tragedy. Yeah. Not to diminish people that haven't done what you've done, who have been through a similar situation, but it's incredible that, because a bit like bullying. Yeah. People that have been bullied, they just want it to stop. They just want it to stop. They're not interested necessarily in the policy or the procedure or what's happening to that person. Sometimes they want revenge or whatever, but usually they just want it to stop. And the easiest thing for people to do is just put that behind them. Yeah. Similar reasons why you don't hear people talk as much about miscarriage or talk about domestic abuse, because it was not a happy time in life and they just want to put it behind them. But you have lent further into a remarkably difficult, delicate, emotional landscape to try and be that person at the end of the tunnel saying, look, there's some light.
There's hope.
People are heading into a dark cave thinking it's a cave, of which point they get to the end of the brick wall and they self-explode. Yeah. Whereas you're like, hang on a minute, it's a tricky road and it's it is going to hurt and there's not even a normal path for everybody. But here's some stuff that is useful that we can try and tailor to your very specific, complex situation. Because, organizations, especially first responders, we lag behind. We lag behind legislation. We lag behind technology. And only through people like you who are interested in doing a really heavy, difficult lift with no financial reward for it, choose to do something. I came across another one recently. There's a guy just had a baby in the organization I work in, someone that I work with. Baby wasn't very well after it was born, and through this process, we had paternity all sorted out, but baby wasn't very well. And it led me to dig deeper into neonatal care. So there was legislative change in 2023 around the Neonatal Care Act, which can entitle people to 10 or 12 weeks of additional leave if your baby has been in specialist neonatal care for 6 days. Never even knew it. Not in a lot of our procedures or anything like that. But imagine if you have a baby and your baby's really poorly from day dot. Well, you get your 1 week paid leave, your 1 week half leave. Back to work you come, Rhiain. Well, my baby's still in critical care. Yeah, paternity's ran out though. So you can say thank you if you like. They give you paternity. Ungrateful. Back you come. You're riding BA2. fucking hell.
I know.
Do you know what I mean? But
I
anyway,
know.
you're clearly on the edge of this legislation, pushing it forward. There's another example. And I think it's so crucially important we have people like you doing that.
Thank you. And I think, one thing I make a point of teaching on our training sessions is about vicarious trauma, because I experienced it myself. I could see how difficult, I know how difficult it is when you've been in an abusive relationship. And so my want to help people that are experiencing it too will never end, because I don't want anyone to feel the way I did. However, I then experienced what I didn't understand at the time, but I've since learned about vicarious trauma, because you're then continuously sort of almost trying to reignite that flame, that difficult moment that you've had. So actually, it's really important for us to be aware of vicarious trauma. A lot of our ambassadors, just the statistics alone will show us that a lot of people we speak to will have experienced domestic abuse, whether it's in their childhood, a previous relationship, it's in the one they're in now, whatever it might be. And actually have that awareness. Know what you can do for self-care to protect yourself and to have healthy boundaries, however that looks. Now, some of our ambassadors come to us with the best of intentions. They might start off on their journey or say partway through, do you know what? I'm not really in the best place that I want to engage with people experiencing it right now. I'd rather take a different backseat role. And I always say to them, that is absolutely fine. And it's one that I actually do a lot myself. I don't support as many people now as I did in the beginning. In the beginning, it was all on me, so I had to. Now I've got so many willing and able ambassadors that I don't so much focus on that. But there's loads more that we do. There's loads more of the raising awareness, of the meetings, of the policy changes, of the setups we can do to support people. And all of that is okay. So I make it really clear to people, just be aware of that and know how to look after yourself, because this is not meant to at any point be detrimental to you as a person. That's not what I want. I don't want that for you. I don't want that for anyone. But there is a lot more going on behind the scenes now. We're looking at Phoenix actually going nationally to other fire services, which I cannot wait for that to happen. Can you imagine how many people that can help? I'd love to see that.
Well, I hope you're ready
day.
for it, because
you.
This might help be a bit of a tipping point.
I hope so.
Because the thing is, once people know about it, you'll get people reaching out asking for more information, and you've got to be ready to go with it.
There's been so many opportunities that have come to me from this that I was never ever expecting. And, I've tried to now embrace them, whereas before I sometimes sort of shied away because I thought, I don't know if I'd be capable of that. I now sit on the City Hall meetings, with, MOPAC and the GLA about violence against women and girls. I'm doing a lot with the NFCC now, and actually I'm a rep from London Fire Brigade for a lot of the work they're doing on domestic abuse. And I've got a big event in May, which will be the first of its kind. So it's all fire services, all chiefs from all of the fire services nationally coming in one room, and us looking, we're past a point now of this is about raising awareness. Like, that's not what this is about. Everybody knows about it, but it's what can you do? What can you do as a person, and what can you do to your organisation to set up services to support your staff? And then we're also looking
because you've been there and
wider.
done that, having those recognised templates, you can almost drop.
They can use my model.
Drop into there and go.
Absolutely.
Use this.
Why
it's fine.
reinvent
Use
the wheel? It's working.
Yeah.
It's working, and feel free to use that in your service if you wish to do so, because it can help so many people, and it's a win-win, right? Because we're looking after our staff, but actually by doing that, they're in effect looking after us, because you're getting that business continuing as we all need it to. And then it's looking wider as well at what we can do for the public. So we've got our new initiative about home fire safety visits that's in a pilot now, and will be going brigade wide very soon. So that is related to the really horrible and unfortunate link between domestic abuse and arson. And actually, statistics show us, and we've seen many of them ourselves in London, that there is a really strong link. Now, fire can be used as a threat, it can be used as a weapon, it can be used to control, but it can also be used to harm. But what we've also seen, interestingly, it's really sad, is that children from abusive households have actually been known to use fire setting as a means to get help. That invisible child, that person that's suffering, that person that's scared, that's seeing things and hearing things that no child should ever have to witness, they are able, by creating fire, have all of those blue lights come to their house, people coming into their home that would have never, maybe ever even been in there, stepped foot. And we as firefighters might be the first person to see them in that situation and get them that support. So there's a lot of really horrible links, but there's positive things we can do. So we now have a system where, just as we have for hoarding, just as we have for when people receive oxygen cylinders into their property, we get these referrals come from external partners, right? And then we triage them, we do our home fire safety visits. So that's our standard practice. We know it serves a really good purpose. We want to prevent, we don't want to have to react. We want to stop the fires before they happen. So actually, we're doing the same with domestic abuse. So services that are dealing with members of the public in London, whether it be police, whether it be charities, local authorities, that when they are helping support those households with the person's consent, only ever with the person's consent, their information can be sent on to us. It will go through our usual triage service. But what better way can we, to prevent that from happening? They might need extra smoke alarms. They might not even have any at all. They might need an arson-proof letterbox, some fire safety advice, basic bread and butter things that we do in our role. But also it gives us that satisfaction that we're doing that home fire safety visit for those vulnerable people that really need it. So it's a win-win. So hopefully that will be going brigade-wide very soon.
I think that's an obvious one, yeah. That's great that you're going in that direction, because people, I would imagine, and I am making guesses now, I don't have data to back this up, but from my limited experiences, I think people of lower socioeconomic levels have greater levels of domestic abuse, because life is just very hard to keep together when, because money, as we've alluded to already, is a big driver in levels of domestic abuse. And children in those situations often get the least attention, usually because of where they live on the socioeconomic scale. I think that's, I think it's great that you're going to be doing these events. When's the one you said in May?
So it's the 18th of May. It's a national forum, and it will be held at our headquarters. So
So this will come out before then.
Okay, that's exciting.
We're going to get this out before then.
Exciting.
If people want to learn, I know they won't necessarily be able to come to that event, but this might act as a lovely precursor for people to go and find out more information. And senior leaders are very busy. So it's fantastic to have so many senior leaders going to this.
Thank you.
And it will make its way onto their list of 48 priorities, which must all be achieved in the next few days. I think what's great about this is the groundswell that this will hopefully encourage as well. So if people within organizations perhaps want to find out some more information, where's the best place for them to go? Because we're going to put some links underneath.
So yeah, you can look at my, I've actually created an Instagram page for this now. So I can give you those links.
Yep. We'll stick that link in there.
Thank you. Yeah. And there'll be some signposting information and support on my page on there too. Yeah.
There's some stuff in there. I will stick in the ones we've got employers initiative on domestic abuse. We've got the Safe Lives stuff we discussed earlier. There's a link to some legislation around domestic abuse, and we'll put the Instagram in there as well.
Yeah,
Rhiain, I really appreciate your time today. I really look forward to coming to one of the events in the future.
Yes, you will
and I really appreciate what you're doing.
Thank you.
It's a massive thing, and I think it's really important. But I look forward to catching up with you soon.
Thank you very much for your time.
Well, that's it for today, folks. Hope you took a lot away from that episode. We started the Firefighters podcast to develop, inspire, connect, motivate, represent, and most importantly, celebrate the world of incredible emergency services operators and the wider sector through this series of wide-ranging conversations. We really love creating this podcast and bringing it to so many people. Did you know you can also find these on YouTube? We do a lot of video podcasts now. You can head over to our YouTube page and follow, subscribe there. And as a final ask from us, whatever platform you're on, please rate the podcast. It really helps us as a key performance indicator to reach more and more people. I've been your host, Pete Wakefield. This has been the Firefighters Podcast. And wherever you are in the world, please stay safe, be happy, and where possible, please remember and support your firefighters and first responders. I'll see you next time.